All right, Coach, you there?
Yeah.
All right, we got Marcus here. Marcus?
Coach, how's it going?
Breaking up a little bit, Coach. Can you speak?
Okay, you guys got me?
Yeah, we got you now.
Okay.
How you doing?
I'm doing good, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Still game planning?
Always. You know that it never stops, man.
Yeah.
It would be a lot easier if I had a young Mark Crandall.
Oh, man. You had many more, Coach.
Okay, so folks are tuned in right now to our Facebook Live and YouTube. We're going to be talking to Coach Doug Martin and Marcus Crandall here alongside, and we'll air this on Pirate Radio Live at a later date. But great to have Coach and Marcus once again. As Chandler said a moment ago, you're batting 1,000 with these interviews. Talked earlier today to Pernell Griffin. That was awesome, and looking forward to talking to Jairus McPhail coming up on Wednesday. Mm-hmm. So keep these great interviews going. And right now we'll talk to Doug Martin, who joins us on the Pirate Radio Live line. And Coach, we appreciate your time today.
I appreciate being on. Thank you.
All right, so where do you want to begin, Marcus? You want to go back to the good old days?
Man, we might as well start there and then finish up where he is right now. But, yeah, absolutely.
And Coach, I ask, when Marcus brings on a guest, I ask them a lot of questions about themselves. I'll ask you about Marcus Crandall.
Oh,
what kind of talent and arm and person did you have to work with there?
Oh, listen, Marcus being in the Hall of Fame in East Carolina is such a deserved award, but because he really – when you start to build football programs, there's always a couple of key players that set the foundation for that program. And Mark was one of those guys for us. I mean, he really, we relied on him for everything. He got us to our first bowl game when we were starting out and getting the program on solid ground. And then he took us to another level, being able to beat a lot of power conference teams and things like that. And I've coached some good quarterbacks in my time. I had David Garrard there at East Carolina, who's obviously a great quarterback. I had Julian Edelman and Josh Cribbs and at Kent State, but I've never coached a better one than Mark Crandall. He's as good as they come.
And, man, awesome words there. And I told you, Marcus, right before we went on, I'm going to start calling you Mark C, like all your teammates and coaches did back then. I like that they call you Mark. Coach, you meet a lot of personalities along the way, great players, people that become friends for life, and some eclectic personalities as well. And Steve Logan from the outside was certainly one of those guys. How about from the inside, working with Steve Logan for all those years? What was that like for you?
The funnest time I had in my entire coaching career. I'll promise you, Steve was great to work for. Number one, because he cared about his coaches and your families, and he kept your families, your kids were invited to come to practice. And Mark can tell you, my kids grew up on the football fields there at East Carolina. It's a great way for your family to grow up, and he was treated everybody really well. I think the thing that people have started to realize now, because of Steve having his radio show there for a while and those things, of how funny he is. And Mark can tell you this too. He's one of the funniest people you'll ever be around in your life. And we knew that at the time, but Steve was more guarded with it, I think, at that time when he was the head coach. But, along the lines, he's the best quarterback coach I've ever been around. Everything I knew about offensive football I took from Steve. And he was just, he's become one of my best friends. He and I do a lot of fishing together out off Emerald Isle now, and I really enjoy all the time I get to spend with him.
Absolutely, Coach. He's definitely one of the funniest guys ever that I've ever met, for sure. And it was hard to take him sometimes because he'd be so funny, but he was so serious at the same time. You know what I mean, right, Coach? And but we kind of got to the point that we knew the difference, if you know what I mean. So when he was serious, and he had all eyes on him, and we adhered to what he had to say, and we just took control and abide by the rules and his leadership and you all's leadership, that is, and did what we had to do.
Yeah, Mark, you're right. I mean, Steve was great at building an atmosphere and a culture. And he built a culture, man. He was dead serious when he was on that football field.
Absolutely.
You know what that is. I mean, everything had to be precise. The route had to be precise. The quarterback's drop had to be precise. The call had to be precise. I mean, there was no deviating from that. But off the field, man, he was just a lot of fun to be around. And I think he treated the players well too, and I'm sure Mark would agree with that. He was always about the players, and he was a good guy to play for and work for.
Absolutely, Coach. Now, you mentioned about us taking the program to a different level. There's a process in every situation in regards to that, and you were part of the process of, the revolving door of coaching positions, that is, in regards to Todd Berry was the offensive coordinator one year, and then you were waiting in the wings, so to speak, and then you had the opportunity to step up to become the offensive coordinator. Take us through that moment for us.
Yeah, I got hired at East Carolina, Mark, because of a man named Bob Leahy, and Bob later ended up being our wide receiver coach there at East Carolina, but Bob was the guy that got Steve Logan started in coaching. And I happened to be working for Bob at East Tennessee State when Steve got the head coaching job at East Carolina. And, lo and behold, Steve ends up hiring me because of Bob. And, I really enjoyed working with Steve and Todd. Todd Berry is a really great football coach, too, that, went on to be a head coach and won the bowl game at Louisiana Monroe and did some great things as a head coach. And Todd and I were real close friends and still are today. When he left, obviously I'd been in the program for a couple of years, and Steve, thought enough of me to move me up as the offensive coordinator, and that was really got my career started. And really appreciative of Steve. And I would have never left East Carolina. I'll tell you, it was the best job I ever had, and I knew it at the time. And I used to watch all these other coaches leave for other jobs. I say, God, these guys are nuts. I mean, you get to live down here on the coast, and and pirate football is so important to all these people here. I mean, it was just the best job ever. And like I said, I enjoyed working for Steve so much. So that's how all that went down. And I was fortunate enough to have some great players, like you were the quarterback there, and Jarris McPhail, I heard you guys mention, another one, and we had all those wide receivers, Troy Smith, and all those guys. And we had some good football players come through in my time there.
And, Coach, I've talked to Marcus quite a bit about this. You had such great quarterbacks to work with that, hey, you might as well put the ball in the air, and not to take away from the awesome running backs during that era, but what y'all were doing at the time there in the early to mid and late 90s, throwing the football. Larry Shannon talked about how much he loved to go vertical and how this offense would throw the bomb and throw it deep. All the passing and all that you were doing back then, how radical was that compared to what other teams were doing and how innovative what you guys were doing back then that now we see every offense in the country pretty much throwing the ball?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great point. And, Steve would never say this to you, but he's the guy that really started that whole air raid thing that you hear now. We were doing that back in the early 90s. And, Steve was doing that in 91 when he was the coordinator at East Carolina and had Jeff Blake as the quarterback. And so, yeah, it was ahead of its time. It really was. We were a lot of five-man protections, which was really rare back then, but our running back would get out on our free release, and we did a lot of empty sets, and we did a lot of things that, people just weren't doing at that time. And it was a lot of fun because it was like an open laboratory. There was nothing that you could bring in to Coach Logan or to our staff, and they'd say, we don't want to try that. I mean, we would take everything out on the practice field and try it and see what it looked like and see how it worked and those type of things. And I think that's why we were able to succeed is because we were always trying to move forward. We were always trying to push the ball into a different direction. And we were ahead for quite a while there.
Marcus, I was thinking back to old Redskins highlights, and Joe Gibbs had two tight ends in protection, a fullback. And how about you with a five-man protection, Marcus? You got a lot of receivers, a lot of targets to throw to, but maybe a guy rushing at you too. So what was it like to play in those offenses?
It was different in Clip because, again, you take note of I was a guy that came from an option system in high school, all throughout high school, and we had three backs in the backfield.
Yeah.
And so triple option and all those dive options, and it was just totally different. And those guys did a tremendous job of bringing me in, coaching me up, and getting me to see what they wanted me to see out there on the field. And then it happened so fast, they were just able to calm my nerves down and all those things as I saw it and processed it. But they took it step by step and got me to the point to where, man, we just wanted people to blitz us, right? And so when they blitzed us, we want to make sure that we took advantage of it.
Marcus Crandall and Coach Doug Martin joining us today here on Pirate Radio Live. And Coach, we'll go back to some ECU memories, but let's go further in your career. You become and I want to ask you about Edelman and Cribbs. You brought up those names. Did you know at the time when you're coaching QBs that one would have one of the greatest catches in Super Bowl history, and the other would be one of the most electric return man in NFL history? I mean, you had some pretty good football players there, not just quarterbacks, right?
Yeah, I really did. I had Josh first, and Josh was an incredible athlete. I mean, incredible athlete, big. Really, people don't realize how big he really was too. But Josh was 215, 220 pounds, and I mean, he had a lot of strength to him and really could run. When I came in, he was really struggling throwing the ball. We kind of did the same thing we did with Marcus. I mean, we started the scat protections and releasing everybody, and we kind of taught him how to handle that, and he actually broke the MAC record for completion percentage my first year there as coordinator. And so we got off to a great start. I thought that Marcus could go to the Canadian, or that Josh could go to the Canadian League and be a tremendous quarterback. He just had in his mind he wanted to be in the NFL, so he was going to go as a free agent, see if he could make it, and he did. And to his credit, man, he had a great career. Julian was a little bit different. Julian, we were the only school to offer Julian Edelman a scholarship, and he was coming out of junior college at the time. Us and Boise State, I think we're only two schools recruiting him. They wanted him to stay in junior college for another year. It's the only reason we got him. And he was probably one of the best competitors that I've been around. You can tell from watching Julian with the Patriots. I mean, he plays with a chip on his shoulder. I mean, everything is about everybody doubts me, and I'm going to prove them wrong, and that's just kind of who he is. So same thing. I didn't know that Julian would become the player that he became. Obviously, I don't think anybody predicted that, but I really thought that he would find a way to make it in the NFL, and I thought he could be a starter as some type of third down back or a receiver or something like that, and didn't surprise me that he made it, but obviously it's a surprise how far he went. He had a tremendous career.
Doug Martin joining us, Marcus Crandall here as well. Marcus?
Hey, Coach, so you talk about Julian. Do you guys ever keep in touch? Does he talk to you? Does he give you a call and reach out to you and say thank you for all the wonderful things that you've taught him over the years as a football player?
We did our program at Kent State the same way we did at East Carolina. So, the players were over at our house for dinner. I mean, I'd come home at night and Julian would be sitting at the dinner table eating with Vicky before I even got home. So he's kind of like a part of our family. Just like, you and David Garrard and all those guys, we love, knowing you guys more than just football players. And so, yeah, he's been really important, to me and my family, and we stay in touch and, trying to help him now as he navigates, life beyond football now and getting in broadcasting and those type of things where he wants to head. So, he's a special guy.
Coach, here at East Carolina, I always hear that ECU basketball is one of the toughest jobs in America. And when you think about football, New Mexico State comes to mind. And I'm looking at it overall, 446 and 665 all time is the record with 30 ties in there. And and look, you experienced it, so you can speak to it. Why? And you had that 2017 7-6 bowl season there, but just wins few and far between, and you are not the only one. That just seems like it's a tough place to coach, a tough place to win. Why would you say that is?
Well, everything goes back to leadership in football. East Carolina, you go back to Leo Jenkins being the president of East Carolina, he dictated that he wanted a football program there. And he put everything into it to have that, got the right coaches, got the right support. And the community supports, football there in Greenville, unlike many other places. And I can tell you, I've been a lot of other places, and you don't have the fan support and just the importance of football like East Carolina does. And the school understands that football provides, publicity for the school in general. It helps with enrollment because the football gets free advertising out for them. Other places don't realize that, and I go to New Mexico State, and I spent 1 year there as offense coordinator. We broke about every offensive record they had there, so I was hired back to be the head coach. Didn't think I wanted to do it. In fact, I told them no twice, and then I finally, decided I'd go back and do it, primarily because my youngest son loved it there and wanted to go back and live there for a while. So, we turned that program around, and that was the first bowl game they'd been to in 60 years, and we won. And, we broke the attendance record at the bowl. We took 25,000 fans over to Tucson to play in that bowl game. So that was a window of opportunity for that university to really have something, because it was hot at that time. And, I met with the president and AD after that bowl game, and, here's your window. You guys got you got to build facilities like East Carolina did. You've got to invest in this program, and they didn't want to go that way and weren't going to do it. And so that's the end of it. And, honestly, I probably should have left at that point right there and just said, well, I've had enough of this. But, my son was on the staff as our wide receiver coach, and, I've had a lot of coaches that I was responsible for, make sure they had jobs. So just to leave, would have been hard on them. So I stuck it out till the end of my contract and then left after that. But the difference is the dedication that the people around the program, particularly the administration, have to support it.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, Coach, right, in regards to, you mentioned about recruiting and enrollment and all of those things. When you're a young athlete and you're coming out of college, or nowadays when you're in the transfer portal, you're looking at different schools, and that's one of the things that people look at. They look at the facilities, they look at the fan base, and all those things as far as the growth is concerned. It definitely plays a huge role in regards to building the program and getting it to where it needs to be. So how hard was it mentally for you to kind of continue on throughout the year when you said you should have left, but you didn't? How hard was that for you to continue?
Yeah, you know what, Mark, it was difficult. I've always enjoyed the players. I had a great group of, the coaching part of it, being on the field there and actually coaching those kids was awesome. I had a great group of kids to work with, really enjoyed them. But it's knowing that you're at such a disadvantage, against everybody really that you're having to play against. That's what made it difficult. And so, keeping your head up through that and just understanding you're going to have to overcome a lot, it was tough. But, I had a great staff. I had a lot of good people there. I got one of the best wives in college football that supported us and was always there for me. So that made it a lot better.
Coach, one more question on this, and then we'll get to brighter topics. But I want to ask you about the going from Sunbelt to independent. And, man, if you're Sunbelt now, the travel New Mexico State might not be good, but the football certainly would be. They got a great conference going right now. Their game's more visible. But at that time, to go from a Sunbelt to an independent, it kind of might go to what you were speaking on as far as leadership and everything goes. That had to be tough for you guys as well.
It was. We started as an independent when I first became the head coach there. In fact, I think the first year we played 8 power conference schools. And we played UCLA, we played Boston College, we played Minnesota, we played Texas. It was tough. Then we got into the Sun Belt, and that's when we kind of got the program turned a little bit. But then the contract ran out with the Sun Belt, and they didn't want New Mexico State anymore because they wouldn't go in all sports. We were just in football only. And they wanted all sports or nothing, and the school didn't want to do that. So, then we went independent again, and there's really no path for you to be an independent in today's game. Very few programs can survive that because you need bowl tie-ins, you need money, you need a conference affiliation to have a footprint so you can recruit geographically in certain areas. So it's difficult as an independent.
Absolutely, Coach. We experienced that somewhat here at ECU, but we were actually tied to an alliance with the Liberty Bowl Conference, or alliance, I should say. Now, Coach, you mentioned kids in regards to transitioning from the college level coaching kids. Now you're at the professional level coaching adults, and talk to us about that transition, what it's been like, and then you have a new league, right? So you're looking at something that you've done before, as far as building. Take us through that process, and how did it come to fruition, and go from there.
Yeah, well, Mark, I was the offense coordinator at Boston College, and our athletic director was a man named Gene DiFlippo. Well, Gene's son, John DiFlippo, was a longtime NFL coordinator and coach, and John and I got to be really good friends while I was there. And so lo and behold, John, he gets this head coaching job with the New Orleans Breakers here in the USFL, and calls me and, hey, I want you to come be my coordinator and help me with this thing. And I thought about it a little bit, and I thought, there's no transfer portal, there's no NIL, there's no recruiting. That might be a pretty good gig, right?
Right.
So yeah, I decided to do it, and it's been great, honestly. The USFL just starting out, so we're not located in New Orleans right now. We're actually in Birmingham because there's 4 hubs for the 8 teams in the USFL right now. Birmingham is one of the hubs for us and the Birmingham team. So that's been a little bit different, but, coaching these players, these guys are hungry because they all either want to get back to the NFL or they're trying to get to the NFL. So there's a lot of motivation for these guys. They want to be coached. They want to win. They want to get better. And it's a more mature group, obviously. The other thing is, it's like I said, you don't have to worry about recruiting and kids going to class and transfer portals and all that stuff. It's just football here. I mean, literally, just all day it's football. And I've enjoyed that part of things. And it's a little bit more of an NFL system, which has been great for me to be, exposed to. And I've really enjoyed this season a lot. And, the great thing about it is you're here for 3 or 4 months, and then, bam, I'm back to Emerald Isle fishing with Coach Logan because we don't have to stay here year-round. So for a guy at my age and this point in my career, this is really a pretty good job.
Coach, I know the XFL just wrapped up their championship. We talked to Garrett McGinn, a former ECU offensive lineman. He was on the championship team. He was also all USFL last year, and I've had a chance to talk to him. I've talked to Warren Saba from the Michigan Panthers, another former Pirate, and they both said they're really happy with the league, and they're trying to get more film out there on themselves. And I asked them about kind of the ins and outs of it because I've also heard a different story. I talked to Bryce Williams, former ECU tight end. He was in the AAF, the Alliance of American Football, and Bryce was worried about a paycheck and worried about his jersey being cleaned and stuff that football players shouldn't have to worry about. That league folded before it got to its championship, but it sounds like the USFL and XFL are on pretty firm ground right now, good backing, good people involved, and so you can focus on the football stuff if you're a player and a coach. Would you agree with that? The USFL is going pretty strong from a stability standpoint.
Yeah, no question. The biggest thing the USFL has going for it is Fox Television owns the USFL.
Yeah.
So there's a strong support from that corporation there. And Fox last year, in the first year, made a ton of money off the USFL, and it's going even better this year in terms of the TV ratings. And that's really all they're focused on right now. So, yeah, things are moving in a good direction for us. Supposedly next year, each team will be in their home cities, and so it'll be more spread out. We'll be in New Orleans. And so if they can get those things done and it keeps getting the TV ratings that it's getting, at this time of year, there's no other football on. So, that's one of the big advantages for it. And I think it is a great league to give guys a second chance, another chance, and I think it's developing into a pretty good professional league.
All right, Coach. Now give us a little synopsis of what your season has been like so far.
Yeah, you know what, Mark? We started off great. We started off 4-0, and we were first place in the league. We beat the Birmingham team, who had only lost 1 game since USFL opened. We beat them pretty good in the opening part of the season. Since that time, we had a little bit of problems, the quarterback injury thing, and that's kind of put us on a little 3-game skid here now. So we're 4-3. We're still tied for first place. We control our own destiny. We got 3 games left. If we can win out, we can be in the playoffs and have a shot at this thing. So some real important games for us coming up. We play Michigan this week. You mentioned East Carolina, a young man that plays for Michigan. So we've got them this week. And then we finish up with Memphis and Houston, and those are both divisional games for us. So last 3 games are huge for us here.
Awesome. So you're burning the midnight candle, Coach?
And, Mark, they're always right. I'm not working for Coach Logan anymore. We just go over.
Man, it's some long nights, huh, Coach? So give us an idea of what that's like as far as your schedule. Like, what time do you get there to the office, and what time are you getting home to get some food in your belly?
Well, the tough part is right now we're based in a hotel, so everything is at the hotel. It's kind of like being in Shawshank. You can't get out of here, You're in here all day. Your meeting rooms are in the hotel, everything. So we start about 8 in the morning. That's special teams meeting, and then we'll have some offensive and defensive meetings. We'll do some walkthroughs, and then the players get to break for lunch after that. That's about 11. That'll take us to about 11. The players will break for lunch, and then we'll have practice in the afternoon. And then after practice, the players are done. So, around 3 o'clock, 3:30, the players are done for the day. The coaches, you're back. You come back and you start game planning for the next day and setting up practice. And all that goes to about probably 10:30 at night. So from 8 in the morning until 10:30 at night as a coach, you're in football mode. But, the day before a game, you get a pretty good break. The day of the game, you usually play early, and then we have that afternoon off or that evening off. So that's when you get a little bit of time to get away from them. But other than that, it's about 24-hour football.
Yeah. Coach, before we let you go, I'd like to ask folks to kind of reach back. I'm going to ask you to reach back in your filing cabinet there in your football brain of all the plays and teams and players and everything you've coached. But your time here at East Carolina, is there a play you remember, a moment, a game that really stands out to you when you think about your time coaching at ECU?
Oh, definitely. I would tell you the game was when we went down. Mark was a part of this. We go down the Orange Bowl and beat Miami. I think it was 31-6. Mark, right?
That's right.
And one of the best plays I've ever seen a quarterback make, and Marcus will know this play because we never worked on him throwing this ball. But we had a little naked play action out of trips, and we had Jason Nichols was coming in motion. He was supposed to split right down the middle of the field, just clear the safety out was his only job. And we were trying to throw it to some other people on some sail routes and things like that. And lo and behold, Mark Crandall comes off the fake, and I don't know how he ever saw this, but the safety screwed up and vacated the middle of the field, and Jason Nichols on that motion came wide open. And one of the quickest releases I've ever seen a quarterback, Mark flipped his hips and just wrist flicked that ball about 40 yards for a touchdown. And, he came off the sideline. I remember Steve asking him, why in the heck you throw the ball there, right? We never practiced it. We never told him to. But he made a great play and got us going in that game. And that's why Mark was such a great player, and that's why we had the success we had as coaches. We had players that could do things that you really never coached them to do.
That's awesome. You know who else remembers that play? Jason Nichols, because he told us that story 2 or 3 weeks ago. He liked that play too, Coach.
I'm sure he did. Yep.
But it still goes back to you guys, Coach, because you always you were fixated on getting us, like I mentioned, getting our eyes to where it needs to be and being disciplined in that process. And so I just stuck to my rules. And sometimes as a coach, you got to take the good with the bad, right? And that was one of the good times that it happened, and everybody was excited about it. And it was definitely a great moment in Pirate history for sure.
Yeah. Well, that was a great group of kids, and Jason Nichols is another one I stayed in touch with forever. I love Jason like a son. He's a great one.
Well, Coach, awesome to catch up with you and talk some football. We'll be rooting for the New Orleans Breakers the remainder of the way. So good luck this season, and we'll catch up with you again down the road. But thanks so much for joining us today.
I appreciate you guys having me on. It was great to talk with you.
Thanks, Coach. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, Mark. See you, buddy.
All right.
There is Doug Martin joining us. And, Marcus, we will talk to you again coming up on, we'll be back here Wednesday recording an interview with Jarris McPhail, and then we'll talk to you live on Pirate Radio Live coming up Thursday with Jason Nichols and Aliko Dunk joining us as well. So, another great interview there from the coaching perspective. And you know what? A lot of the former players we've talked to have gone into coaching. Jason is one of those, and Jermaine Smith, who we talked to. So another great interview there, going over memory lane. And you, look, Marcus, you're one of the most humble men I've ever met, but it don't hurt to hear people talk about how good you were, right?
And it's good. It's good. And that humbleness, within that humbleness, there's definitely a great level of confidence, which comes from God first. And but yeah, I mean, throughout that process, man, of becoming great, you have to stay humble and then keep a level head for sure.
Marcus, another great interview. Thank you for setting that up for us. And like I said, I know the Pirate fans and listeners really enjoy those walks down memory lane and finding out what these guys are up to today. And we'll keep it rolling.
Absolutely, man. Great job, Clip.
All right, you too. And we'll see you soon, Marcus. And we'll see you fine folks about an hour and a half from now on Pirate Radio Live. Added a couple of late guests. We're going to talk to the pitchers on the Players Lounge. So Josh Groves, Garrett Saylor, Carter Spivey going to join us on the show along with all of our other guests. So we're going to have some packed shows this week on Pirate